What's up, guys? Tech and Tyler. Today we're going to be doing a diagnostic and repair on this older Bumpboxx boombox. Now, this boombox is a boombox from a coworker of mine who got this from his dad, so it's kind of sentimental because his dad unfortunately passed away. So he really wants this fixed, and I've already taken a look at it once and fixed it, and the problem that it was having is you could plug it in and the charge light would come on, but it wasn't actually working still. So we replaced the battery in it and it started to work, which was really good. But unfortunately, apparently that's not the only thing wrong with it. Apparently the actual charging circuit inside of it isn't working, and so the battery in it just dies and then it won't charge. And I remember originally when we opened this up too, we figured out that for some odd reason the plug that actually went to either the charging circuit or the battery was for some reason disconnected. Not too sure why, but after plugging that back in, it came back to life and started working. So I'm thinking, I wonder if possibly something else might have became disconnected inside of it, or it's possible that the charging circuit altogether isn't working. So I'm going to take you step by step on how to getting this open and looking at the circuitry on the inside of it, and I'm going to show how to possibly repair it, hopefully, but definitely diagnose an issue with it. And I'm also going to show the mod that I did for it for the battery as well, and show you how to take the battery out and what you would need to do to change it, because like I said, this is an older model, so it's a bit different. This company I know is still making these, but they're way smaller, whereas this one is a really big model, but it's also older. I think this model was made anywhere between maybe 2015 to 2018, I want to say. So it's definitely been used quite a bit, and it's also been a while since it was used too, before I ended up getting it working at least. But now it's, finally showing the real reason why it stopped working, and that's due to the fact that the charging circuit's not working in it. So I'm going to start getting the right speaker here removed, and I'll show you step by step on what it is you have to do to start taking this apart to get to the inside of it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to remove this speaker grill cover, and this is only held on by 4 screws, which are these 4 screws right here. You just remove these from here, 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 and here, and then the grill comes off of it. It's just on there for protection for the speaker here. So once you get this off of it, then now you can remove the 4 screws for the actual speaker, and then once you take that out, you can disconnect it and move it over to the side, and then you can see the insides where all the wiring and the circuitry is. So let me get this unscrewed and get this removed, and I'll bring you back. Okay, so now we have the 4 screws removed from here, 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 and here for the speaker. Unfortunately, because these speakers are kind of built a little bit cheap, they have the wires for the actual speaker soldered, and they're not connectors. The only connector for the speaker is inside of it, which is right here, but they put some sort of like glue or epoxy on it, so it makes it really hard to undo it from the connector. So luckily I have this piece of metal already screwed to my workbench, so I can just have the speaker sit on that with the magnet in order to have it off to the side to get into it. But yeah, like I said, you just remove these 4 screws. Now remember as well, these 4 screws here for the speaker are smaller than the ones for the actual grill here, which if you take a look, the ones for the grill are a little bit longer and a little bit more stout versus these ones. Like the head's bigger on these, and they're just a little bit of a thicker screw versus the one for the speaker. So keep that in mind, that you make sure that these are separated so you know which ones go where. So as you can tell, if you look inside of here, it's a big mess of wires, and this over here is the actual control board, which is on the side of it right here. This is where you have your screen. It shows like your volume and all that, and all your inputs and your power button. So I also need to take this off. So I'm going to get this unscrewed as well and get this pulled out of here, and then that way we can be able to look in here and diagnose possibly more of the issue. Now at the same time, you probably don't need to remove this, so I'm going to look in here a little bit more before I remove this off here, because if I don't need to remove this and it's just somewhere in this issue, then that's a little bit more of a time saver. But if we take a look in here real quick, so this is probably your amplifier control board, and this also is what I think is running possibly the charge system, this board. Down here is also another board which could possibly be the charging system board. I'm not too sure exactly which board is which, because I haven't really worked on these ones ever before except for this one. So it is quite possible that this could be the charge board. And if you look right there, there's a little fuse on it right here, and these fuses are kind of like the same fuses that are in like strands of Christmas lights. So if that's the case, and it's possibly right there, that fuse that's blown, I could easily change that fuse out for the charging system, and that might bring it back to life. So let me take a look around real quick and take this board out, and let's take a look at that fuse real quick and see if that fuse is what's causing the problem. Okay, so I got the board out now, and with further inspection, this looks to be the actual charging board here. And if you look at this little transformer sticker right here, it says output 15 volt, which would make sense because the battery that's in this is a 12 volt battery. So this definitely would be the board to charge it. And if you also look inside of here too, these wires right here are coming straight off of the line side, which is for this plug right here. And then this connector gets plugged into this connector to provide this board power. So now I need to see if this fuse right here is blown, and if this fuse is blown, well then that would explain why this isn't charging the board. But if it's not blown, then we have another problem with this, which if I flip it over here, the solder joints look okay, but there's a couple of things on this board that are a little concerning, like all this, I don't know if this is corrosion or what that is on there, but it's something on the contacts here, and I'm kind of wondering if this is possibly what's causing it too. I want to say my coworker said that there might have been some water damage with this, which if that's the case, then that would make sense, or if it was just stored in a really bad humid place. But if you also look at this connection right here, that is a pretty bad looking solder joint right here, because it's going from the one pin and it's like bridged together with this little like resistor or diode or whatever component that is on this board. So it might be okay, but that right there is a little concerning just because I don't like how that looks. But if you look too, that's kind of strange how they have both of these connections, just these two together, but they're split off into a 4-pin connector. So that's a little different, but that makes it a little easier to test to see if we even have voltage coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a multimeter, and I'm going to see if possibly by plugging this in, if we're getting any power out of here. And if we're not, then I'll test this fuse next and see if that's blown. And if that's not blown and we're not getting power, and those two things aren't the reason, then we have something else wrong with this board, and I'll have to do some more digging in it. So let me get a multimeter, and I'll come back and show you or tell you what I find out about this board. Okay, so I've tested it with a multimeter, and on the side with the red and blue wire, we're getting 120 volts out of that connector going into the board. But when I test power into this connector here coming out of the board, we get nothing. It should be like what it says on the transformer, 15 volt or anywhere between 12 to 15 volt. So now that I know that we're not getting anything in this connector here, I'm thinking it could be an issue with the fuse. So now I'm going to disconnect this, test the fuse really quick, and see if it's the fuse that's the problem. Okay, so I tested the fuse on it, and the fuse actually is good. And then I went and I went to go back and retest it, the actual board, and this board is actually producing the 15 volts surprisingly. So the board itself is actually good. So what I did here is I put the probes from my multimeter into the connector that is going to these wires into the housing here for the battery, which is in the bottom, and I'll show you that at some point. But what it says on the multimeter is that we're getting 6.1 volts, which isn't correct. It should be at least 12 to 15. So there's still something wrong going on with this boombox here. And like I said, if you look on the side here, it has a charging light. So it says it's charging, but it's not actually charging. Now, I will say, I'm not a professional at this. I just do this as a hobby and for fun and to help people out as well. I know more about other particular things that involves electrical and like electronics. So I'm not, a professional, but I know what to look for, what to do, stuff like that. So this isn't my first time doing stuff like this, but I will say though, with this particular thing, because I've never worked on one of these before, if you look inside of here, right there's another connector, and above it is another connector, and those two connectors don't have anything plugged into it. Well, when we took this apart for the first time, we actually found out that the plug for the battery was for some reason disconnected. And so the plug that's right there that is plugged in at the moment for the battery, I'm wondering now if that plug originally was in the one up top and this one is the wrong plug, because there was no indication of where it came from. Not even the glue said like where it fell out of from. So it is possible that maybe from the start of plugging it into that connection there was wrong, and it's actually that connection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the multimeter, test power coming out of that connector, and see if it's a higher voltage versus this one. And it's possible that that connector right there above my finger is the correct one to charge the battery, and the whole issue all along was actually the fact that it was plugged into the wrong one. But the start of the whole problem was bad battery and also that being unplugged. So let me test that and see if that's the actual problem. But good news, the actual charging board is still good, which is fantastic, because I don't think it would be easy to find replacements of these, even from the company, because since this is an older box, I doubt that they make replacement parts. And yeah, you could modify a 12-volt charger to go in here. It wouldn't be too hard to do it, but I feel like it wouldn't work the correct way, because it needs this board to plug in to this board, and then it branches off to power other things on the board, and then it goes through a whole bunch of like capacitors, transistors, resistors to go through to feed something in this board to charge the battery. So it would kind of be a little difficult to do it. Somebody definitely smarter than me could figure out a way to do it, but I'm trying to do it the most fastest way as possible to get it up and running without having to spend a whole bunch of money on it or do a whole lot of work. So we're still in the diagnostic phase of trying to figure out what's wrong with it, and so far like I said, what we found is that the board's good, so it's possible it's the connection that's wrong. So let me test that, like I said, real quick, and we'll see if that makes a difference, that connector versus this connector. Okay, so even switching out the one plug, like I said, to the other terminal, from right here, from where this is plugged in here into this one, it made no difference. It still pops up only about 6 volts or so. So there's still something else really weird going on here, and I actually found out something interesting, and so I had to pull the whole board out. And I don't know if this has to do with anything with the charging necessarily, but it is possible. But if you look here, this wire right here is completely burnt up and just not even connected to anything anymore. It's completely just toasted. So I don't know if this is possibly has to do something with the charging system as well. Maybe like it regulates it or controls maybe how the voltage is coming out of it, because I wonder it, because this red wire right here is going to here, and then it's going down to about right here, which is part of the AC circuit. And so I'm kind of wondering if that possibly might have something to do with it. I'm not too sure. As you can tell in this little connector here, there's 2 terminals, but only 1 terminal is being used. So maybe it's just a little like a little, what's the term for it? I'm blanking on it. Like a signal wire or something that lets it know, like, hey, there's power, let it charge. I can't think of the term for it. I know there's a term for it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I kind of wonder if this might have something to do with why it's not charging. So I'm going to pop this board off, disconnect this wire, and I'm going to fix this and reconnect it and see if that makes a difference. Because like I said, as you can kind of tell, some components look a little rusty. So I think this had some water damage done to it at one point. Or like I said, it was in a very humid area, so it definitely wasn't stored in the best place. So that could be a reason why that we're having the charging issue. So let me get this board off, let me repair this wire, and then we'll come back and see if that possibly might have changed anything. Okay, so I crudely made a jumper wire to go from the connections here down to the connector here. And something interesting actually happens. So when it's plugged in and that light comes on charging with this connected, once I disconnect these wires, that light will turn green and act like it's full, like it's not charging. So I think this is the charge sensor to let it know when it gets up to, full battery, to stop charging, to protect it. Well, the thing about it is how I showed this really bad burnt up wire here. Apparently the one side of the wire was good and actually, telling it to charge, but the other side of it was burned up, wasn't even connected, so it wasn't doing anything. But from what I've gathered information wise, is it doesn't matter apparently which terminal is touched by which thing. Apparently as long as one of them is touching, it makes it think it's doing something. But weirdly enough, I'm still not getting the voltages that I should get. When I test power on here, the only thing that I get is what's coming from the battery. I'm not actually getting any power out of it when the battery's plugged in. It's only when it's unplugged am I getting 12 volts, and that connection above it gets 12 volts as well. But when I plug the wires into that connector as well, it doesn't do anything either. So something in this board is definitely preventing this from charging, and I'm not too sure why. So I'm definitely gonna have to still do some digging on this for sure. So there might be a part 2 to this video, because I'm gonna have to do some digging and maybe order a new board if possible, or figure something out, because something is definitely not right at all. Something is telling something to either not give the power it needs to charge it, or it's something with, like I said, possibly the power supply, and anytime it sees any voltage for charging, it just drops for some reason. So there's still something weird not working right. I'm not too sure, but I definitely don't think that this burned up wire here helped. That was a different problem that I never even noticed first opening this about like this cause. If it had a cause, or I just didn't even notice in general that wire was burned up, and if that could have been a cause for maybe something happening, I'm not too sure. But something is still not working 100% correctly, so I'm still gonna have to do some digging, test more voltages, and see if I can figure out something, because something is not adding up here, and it's getting kind of confusing. Because like I said, I made a discovery with the burned up wire, and then jumping it to where it was hooked up originally is making it, act like it's charging, but it's still not charging. It's still not pumping out the voltages that it should give, like I said. So definitely something really weird and confusing. And not to mention too, these boards and the way how they're constructed and stuff like that, and the wiring for them are not that great, honestly. I've definitely seen worse, but I've definitely seen better. But this just seems very cheaply made, I will say that. Because not to mention too, if you look at all these connections here, each one of them, like that one, have all these like it has all this glue on it. And I mean, the connector that's for the battery, which I popped off because I was wondering if the pins were messed up. As you can tell, it's got glue on it as well. But the issue is when you look at the board at one of these two connectors here, there's no glue. So you kind of can't tell where this was connected, unfortunately, whereas you could the other ones, because, you know, if it had a, you know, a glue dot on there, I could be able to identify possibly quicker if, you know, which connector was the accurate one, because, you know, this one right here that the battery is plugged into right there says DC 12 volt. The one above it just has a plus and negative mark on it right there, but it doesn't say anything else besides that. So it might just be an extra, you know, spot to plug something in. I'm not too sure actually about that. I'm not sure overall how this contraption even is supposed to really work, because another interesting thing I learned too is if I turn the boombox on and then turn it off, I can hear a click. I can hear a small click coming from this board, and I'm assuming that that click is something in the board telling it, hey, it's off, click, switch to charging power. But the only issue is I don't know what on here is clicking, and I'm kind of wondering if it's possibly this ceramic piece right here. I wonder if this has an internal switch in it that when you turn it off, it clicks on and clicks off. It's possible. I've seen stuff like that before, but then again, it could also be something totally different on this board too. So I'm not too sure. There's some very weird stuff going on here. I mean, there's still more connections inside here, like this board here. There's another board up here. So I mean, it's possible that maybe that plug goes to something else, but I highly doubt it. I think it connects to right there because it says DC 12 volt, so that has to be what's providing, you know, DC 12 volt to the board. And, you know, depending on what I can find, like information wise, or possibly just even just, you know, digging through this thing, I might have to rig it up, which I don't know what that would cause. I don't know if it would cause it to burn out the battery, overcharge it, something. It could possibly do something bad, but I'm kind of wondering if it is possible to jump these two battery terminals and just jump it to the DC 15 volt line, so that way it's constantly charging. But like I said, I don't want to burn it out or do any more harm than what's already done. So I'd like to figure out what's going on, but it's got to be in this general area. So something in here is messed up for sure. And with earlier me saying it has either, you know, water damage or water damage due to humidity, it is possible that something in here is messed up and not letting it do what it needs to be done. So I'm definitely gonna have to go through, test a couple more things, stuff like that. So I think we'll stop here at part 1, and I'll definitely have to make a part 2 and resume where we left off, and you know, make an update if I find anything else out about this, or have come up with a solution. So yeah, this will end here at part 1, and we'll resume at part 2 eventually, possibly soon. Might be a little bit, not too sure, but stick around and find out and see what the outcome of this Bumpboxx boombox is gonna be. Because overall, like I said at the beginning of the video, it's a very sentimental piece to a coworker, and overall it's a pretty cool boombox, pretty neat. Like I said, it sounds really good. I don't know a whole lot about this company here, besides I've seen some reviews on them and a lot of people like them, but I've never used one, come across one, tested one, except for this one here. And you know, it's not the worst ever. I've definitely heard better. It does get pretty loud. It's got good, you know, bass levels and treble levels to it and all. It's just, obviously, you know, with this being older and the technology being older, it's going to be a little iffy. So, yeah, that's just one of the downfalls about having, you know, one of these older electronical boom boxes of this generation. So, yeah, but, yeah, stay tuned for part 2. will come out eventually here, possibly soon. Not too sure yet, depending on what I find out about this board. But yeah, I appreciate everyone watching. Like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned, and thank you.